The morning sun streamed through the tall windows of the courthouse, casting long shadows across the polished marble floor. Gloria Matthews sat in the back row of the courtroom, her hands folded neatly in her lap. At 52, she carried herself with quiet dignity, her gray-streaked hair pulled back in a simple bun, her uniform pressed despite her early morning bus ride across town. For 15 years, Gloria had worked as a housekeeper in the sprawling hillside mansion of Richard Chen, one of the country's wealthiest tech entrepreneurs. She'd arrived each morning at 6, prepared his breakfast, managed his household, and over time had become something like furniture to him, essential but invisible. That was fine with Gloria. She took pride in her work, in the way she kept his life running smoothly while he built his empire. But today was different. Today she wasn't there to clean or cook, she was there to watch. The courtroom buzzed with whispers and the occasional cough, everyone waiting for the day's proceedings to begin. Reporters clutched notepads, their press badges dangling from lanyards. A court artist sketched preliminary lines on her pad. The fraud case against Richard had been front-page news for weeks. Accusations that his company had misled investors about a new technology, potentially costing people millions. Gloria didn't believe it for a second. In 15 years, she'd overheard thousands of conversations, seen how Richard worked until midnight, watched him turn down deals that might have made him richer, but didn't match his values. She knew the man behind the headlines. "All rise," the bailiff's voice boomed through the room. Everyone stood as Judge Franklin entered, his robes swishing as he took his seat at the bench. Gloria noticed Richard at the defense table, perfectly, still in his tailored suit, his lawyer Harold Pierce leaning toward him whispering something in his ear. "Be seated," the judge said, settling into his chair. "We'll continue with the testimony of Dr. Leslie Huang." Gloria watched as a woman in a navy suit took the stand, swore her oath, and began to explain complex financial algorithms that Gloria didn't fully understand. But she could read the jury's faces, 12 ordinary people looking increasingly convinced of Richard's guilt. She glanced at Richard, noting the tightness around his eyes, the only sign of his stress. The morning crawled by with technical testimony. During a brief recess, Gloria stayed in her seat, unwrapping the sandwich she'd packed. She watched Richard and his lawyer in deep conversation across the room. Their body language worried her. Harold seemed agitated, Richard confused. When court resumed, something felt different. Harold Pierce stood up slowly. "Your Honor, if I may address the court," he said, his voice carrying a note Gloria had never heard before. Uncertainty. Judge Franklin peered over his glasses. "Go ahead, Mr. Pierce. I must regretfully inform the court that I can no longer represent Mr. Chen in this matter." A pause. "A conflict of interest has come to light that makes it impossible for me to continue." The courtroom erupted. Judge Franklin banged his gavel repeatedly. "Order! Order in my courtroom." Gloria's sandwich fell forgotten to the floor. She leaned forward, unable to believe what she was hearing. Richard sat frozen, the blood draining from his face. "Mr. Pierce," the judge said once the noise subsided, "this is highly irregular. We're in the middle of trial." "I understand, Your Honor, and I deeply regret the timing, but professional ethics leave me no choice. I've only become aware of this conflict this morning." The prosecutor, a sharp-featured woman named Victoria Wells, was on her feet immediately. "Your Honor, the people object to any delay. Mr. Chen has a team of attorneys at his disposal. Surely one of them can step in." Gloria watched Richard shake his head slightly. She knew what the prosecutor didn't, that Richard had put his trust entirely in Harold. There was no team waiting in the wings. Judge Franklin removed his glasses, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "Mr. Chen, what do you wish to do? Do you have alternate counsel present?" Richard stood, straightening his tie with uncharacteristically shaky hands. "Your Honor, this comes as a complete surprise to me. I do not have another attorney prepared to take over my defense at this moment." "Then I have no choice but to grant a brief recess. You have until tomorrow morning to secure new counsel, Mr. Chen. If you cannot, You'll either need to represent yourself or face a mistrial. We will reconvene at 9 a.m. tomorrow." The gavel came down with finality. The courtroom buzzed again as reporters rushed for the doors, eager to break the story. Gloria remained seated watching as Richard stood alone at the defense table, abandoned. Harold Pierce was already gone, slipping out a side door without even a backward glance. Gloria's heart pounded in her chest. She knew what this meant. Mid-trial, no lawyer worth their salt would take on such a complex case with no preparation time. By tomorrow, the prosecution would be facing either Richard himself, a brilliant man but no lawyer, or some junior attorney thrown into the deep end. Either way, his chances had just plummeted from slim to nearly none. She watched as Richard gathered his papers with mechanical movements. He looked lost, nothing like the confident man who ran board meetings and gave speeches to thousands. For the first time in 15 years, Gloria saw him vulnerable, human. Before she knew what she was doing, Gloria had risen from her seat. She moved down the aisle, her sensible shoes quiet on the carpet. A security guard gave her a questioning look, but she walked with such purpose that he didn't stop her. "Mr. Chen," she said quietly, reaching the wooden barrier that separated the gallery from the court floor. Richard looked up, his eyes taking a moment to focus. "Gloria?" Surprise flickered across his face, as if he'd forgotten she existed outside his home. "What are you doing here?" "I've been coming every day," she said simply. Then, lowering her voice, "What happened with Mr. Pierce?" Richard glanced around, then stepped closer to the barrier. "I honestly don't know. He received a phone call this morning, then told me he had to withdraw. He wouldn't explain further." He ran a hand through his hair. "I'm finished, Gloria." "No, lawyer can prepare by tomorrow." Gloria took a deep breath. The words she was about to say seemed to come from somewhere outside herself, but once they started, she couldn't stop them. "There might be a way," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Something you don't know about me?" Richard frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" Gloria straightened her shoulders. "I have a law degree, Mr. Chen, and I'm licensed to practice in this state." His eyes widened. "You... what? How is that possible? You're your housekeeper." "Yes." She met his gaze evenly. "I clean your home during the day and studied law at night. For 8 years. I finished 4 years ago." "But you never said anything," he whispered, stunned. "Why didn't you leave to practice law?" Gloria smiled slightly. "The job market isn't kind to 50-something black women with no experience, even with a law degree, and I needed the steady income." She paused. "But I've kept up with all the developments in business law. I subscribe to the journals. I understand what this case is about." Richard stared at her as if seeing her for the first time. "Have you ever actually practiced, been in a courtroom?" "No," she admitted. "But I know you, I know your business. I've heard you talk about these projects for years. And most importantly, I know you're innocent." A court officer approached them. "Sir, we need to clear the courtroom." Richard barely glanced at him. "One moment, please." He turned back to Gloria. "You're serious about this?" Gloria nodded, her heart pounding but her voice steady. "Meet me in the courthouse coffee shop in 15 minutes. We need to talk properly." As she turned to leave, Richard called after her. "Gloria, wait. Why would you do this for me?" She paused, looking back at him. "Because for 15 years I've seen who you really are when no one's watching, and that man deserves someone on his side." She straightened her simple cardigan. 15 minutes, Mr. Chen. I'll be waiting." Gloria walked from the courtroom, her steps purposeful. In the bathroom, she opened her large handbag and pulled out a folded blazer she'd brought in case the courtroom was cold. She took out her bun, smoothed her hair, and applied a touch of lipstick from a nearly empty tube. In the mirror, she saw not just a housekeeper, but the woman she'd worked so hard to become. A woman who had raised 2 children alone after her husband died, who had cleaned houses by day and studied by night, who had passed the bar exam on her first try. "I will defend him," she whispered to her reflection, rehearsing the words she would soon say to Richard. Then louder, with conviction, "I will defend him." She had 15 minutes to prepare for the biggest conversation of her life. And if Richard said yes, she had less than 24 hours to prepare for the fight of his. The courthouse coffee shop buzzed with whispered conversations, most about the shocking development in the Chen trial. Gloria sat at a corner table, back straight, hands wrapped around a cup of tea she hadn't touched. Every time the door opened, her heart jumped, but it wasn't until almost 20 minutes had passed that Richard walked in. He'd loosened his tie, and his usually perfect hair was slightly mussed from running his fingers through it. He scanned the room, spotted her, and for a moment Gloria thought he might turn and leave. Instead, he walked over and sat down across from her. "I'm sorry I'm late," he said, his voice low. "My phone's been ringing nonstop. News travels fast." "It's fine," Gloria replied, pushing a cup toward him. "I ordered you coffee. Black, 1 sugar. Richard looked surprised, then took a sip. "Perfect. How did you—" 15 years of making your coffee, Mr. Chen." She smiled slightly. "I pay attention." He nodded slowly, studying her face as if trying to reconcile two different people. The quiet housekeeper who had blended into the background of his life, and the woman sitting confidently before him now, offering to defend him in court. "Tell me about your law degree," he said finally. Gloria took a deep breath. "I started night classes after my husband died. My children were teenagers then, and I needed better work to support them. It took 8 years because I could only take 2 classes each semester while working full-time. At my house. Yes, and before that, cleaning office buildings." She met his eyes. "I graduated from Westlake Law School. Not Harvard or Yale, but a solid accredited program. I passed the bar on my first attempt." Richard leaned forward. "But you never practiced? Not even once?" Gloria shook her head. "I applied to 63 law firms after graduation. I got 3 interviews and 0 offers." She kept her voice matter-of-fact, free from bitterness. "Most wanted younger associates who could work 80-hour weeks. A few were more honest and told me clients might not respond well to—" She gestured to herself. "A black woman in her 50s, Richard finished quietly. "Exactly. So I kept my job with you. The pay was good, the hours steady, and it helped put my daughter through nursing school." She straightened her shoulders. "But I never stopped learning. I've read every journal, followed every major business law case. I've listened to you talk about your work for years. I understand what you do." Richard ran a hand over his face. "Gloria, I appreciate this. I really do. But this case, it's complex. The prosecution has a team of experts. They've been preparing for months. So have I," Gloria said firmly. "Not intentionally, perhaps, but I've been there, in your home, hearing you talk about this technology since its beginning. I've heard your excitement about what it could do, your frustration with the setbacks. I've seen the real timeline, not the one the prosecution is trying to create." She pulled a notebook from her bag and opened it. "I've taken notes every day of the trial so far. The prosecution's case has holes, big ones. Harold was too cautious to exploit them fully." Richard's eyebrows rose as he glanced at her neat handwriting. "You've been analyzing the case all along?" "I have," she said simply. "Because I knew you were innocent. The Richard Chen I know doesn't cut corners or lie to investors." For several long moments, Richard said nothing, just studied her face. Then he glanced at his watch. "It's almost 5. The courthouse will be closing soon." Gloria's heart sank. He was going to refuse. She'd overstepped, made a fool of herself. She began, gathering her things. "If we're going to prepare," Richard said suddenly, "we should go somewhere we can work through the night. My house has everything we need." Gloria froze, then slowly looked up. "You're saying yes? You want me to represent you?" Richard gave a short laugh that held no humor. "Want isn't exactly the word, but Harold has left me with almost no options, and a mistrial would just prolong this nightmare." He met her eyes, And strangely, I think you might know me, and this case better than any lawyer I could hire overnight. I won't let you down, Gloria said, determination in every word. I know you won't, Richard replied, and for the first time that day, he smiled slightly. You never have. The drive to Richard's house was silent, both of them lost in thought. Gloria sat in the passenger seat of his luxury car, watching familiar streets pass by. How many times had she taken the bus along this same route? Today, everything looked different. When they arrived, Richard hesitated at the front door, key in hand. This feels strange, he admitted. For me too, Gloria said. She'd always entered through the service door at the back, never the grand entrance. Inside, they stood awkwardly in the foyer she had polished just yesterday morning. We should use the study, Richard said finally. I'll get the case files. Gloria nodded. I'll make coffee, we have a long night ahead. In the kitchen, her domain for so many years, Gloria moved with automatic efficiency, preparing a tray with coffee and the sandwiches she'd been planning to make for Richard's lunch tomorrow. Some habits were hard to break. When she entered the study, Richard had spread documents across the large mahogany desk. He looked up, surprised to see the food. You didn't have to. We need to eat, she said simply, setting down the tray. Now tell me everything Harold told you about the prosecution's strategy. For the next 2 hours, they talked through the case. Richard explained the technology at the heart of the dispute, a new encryption method his company had developed. The prosecution claimed he had known about critical flaws but had hidden them from investors. But that's not what happened, Richard insisted, pacing the room. We discovered the flaws after the investment round. We disclosed them as soon as we confirmed the issues. Gloria made notes, asking occasional questions. The timing is everything, she murmured. We need to establish the exact timeline. Harold has all the documentation, Richard said, frustration evident. Emails, lab reports, meeting minutes. Gloria thought for a moment. Do you keep copies of your emails? Of course, they're on the server. And your calendar with all your meetings logged? Richard nodded slowly, understanding dawning. Yes, every meeting for the past 5 years is recorded. Then we have what we need, Gloria said, standing up. Show me. They moved to Richard's home office where he logged into the company system. For the next several hours, they combed through emails, calendar entries, and digital notes, building a precise timeline that contradicted the prosecution's narrative. As midnight approached, Gloria rubbed her tired eyes. The prosecution's key witness, Dr. Huang, testified the flaws were discoverable by March. But according to these lab reports, your team only had preliminary results then. The conclusive tests came in May, and you disclosed to investors in June. Exactly, Richard said, leaning back in his chair. That's what I've been trying to explain. We need to highlight this in court tomorrow, Gloria said, making more notes. And we need to understand why Dr. Huang would testify incorrectly. Richard frowned. Harold never pushed her on the timeline. It was frustrating to watch. Well, I will, Gloria said firmly. Then she hesitated. Mr. Chen, Richard, I need to prepare you for tomorrow. It won't be easy. I know, he said quietly. No, I don't think you do. Gloria met his eyes directly. When we walk into that courtroom, people will stare. They'll whisper. The prosecution will try to delay. The judge might question my qualifications. And even if we get past all that, everyone will be watching, waiting for me to fail. For us to fail, Richard corrected. We're in this together now. Gloria shook her head. It's different for me. I'm not just fighting for your case. I'm fighting against every assumption people will make when they see me. She squared her shoulders. I need to change before court tomorrow. Do you mind if I go home first? No, Richard said. But I had another thought. He hesitated. My wife left some clothes here when we separated, professional things. They might fit you, and it would save you a trip home. Gloria considered this. That might work. Thank you. An hour later, she stood in front of a mirror in one of the guest rooms, wearing a simple but elegant navy suit that fit surprisingly. Well, She'd never worn anything so expensive in her life. There was a knock at the door. "Gloria? Are you still awake?" She opened the door to find Richard holding a small gift box. "What's this?" "I found these in my safe," he said, opening the box to reveal a pair of pearl earrings. "They were my mother's. She worked as a hotel maid before my father's business took off. She always said they were her reminder that circumstances can change." He held them out. "I'd like you to wear them tomorrow." Gloria was speechless. Finally, she took the box with careful hands. "I'll take good care of them." "I know you will," Richard said, "just like you're taking care of me." He gave her a tired smile. "We should try to get some sleep. Court starts in 7 hours. After he left, Gloria sat on the edge of the bed holding the pearl earrings. For 15 years she had worked in this house, invisible in plain sight. Tomorrow, everyone would see her. The thought was terrifying and thrilling in equal measure. She set her alarm, laid out the suit for morning, and finally allowed herself to rest. But before sleep claimed her, she whispered the words that had become her mantra. "I will defend him," and this time she truly believed she could. Morning arrived too quickly. Gloria woke before her alarm, the unfamiliar ceiling of the guest room momentarily confusing her. Then reality rushed back. The trial, Harold's abandonment, her impulsive offer. Today, she would stand in a courtroom not as an observer, but as defense counsel for one of the richest men in the country. Her hands trembled slightly as she put on the borrowed suit and fastened Richard's mother's pearl earrings. The woman in the mirror looked different, professional, capable, determined. She needed to become that woman fully, not just look the part. Downstairs, she found Richard in the kitchen attempting to make coffee. It was strange seeing him there in her space, fumbling with the machine she operated every morning. "Let me," she said, gently moving him aside. "Sorry, I'm not very good at this," he admitted. "You never had to be." Gloria prepared the coffee with practiced movements. "Did you sleep?" "Hardly." Richard leaned against the counter, already dressed in a dark gray suit. "You?" "A little." She handed him a cup. "We should go over our strategy again on the way." Richard nodded, studying her. "The suit fits well." "Yes." Gloria smoothed the fabric self-consciously. "Thank you." An awkward silence fell between them. Employer and employee transformed overnight into something undefined. Partners, perhaps. Gloria broke it first. "We should leave soon. I want to arrive early." "The car will be ready in 10 minutes, Richard said, then hesitated. "Gloria, no matter what happens today, I want you to know I'm grateful." She met his eyes. "Save your gratitude for after we win." The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters and curious onlookers. As Richard's car pulled up, cameras turned toward them, expecting to see a new high-powered attorney. The confusion was palpable when Gloria emerged instead, walking slightly behind Richard, but with her head held high. "Mr. Chen, Mr. Chen," reporters called out. "Who's representing?" "You today?" Richard paused, glancing at Gloria. She gave him a small nod. "This is Gloria Matthews," he announced. "My attorney." The questions exploded around them. Gloria kept her expression neutral as they navigated through the crowd, though she heard the whispers clearly enough. Isn't she his housekeeper? Is this some kind of publicity stunt? He's really desperate if that's his lawyer. Inside, away from the cameras, Richard turned to her. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," Gloria said firmly. "This is exactly what I expected." She checked her watch. "We have 30 minutes before court begins. Let's review Dr. Huang's testimony one more time." They found a quiet corner, heads bent over, Gloria's notes until a court officer approached to direct them to the courtroom. As they walked in, Gloria was acutely aware of every eye following them. The prosecution team, led by Victoria Wells, watched with barely concealed amusement. Judge Franklin entered, and the ritual all-rise momentarily restored normalcy. Once everyone was seated, he peered over his glasses at the defense table. "I see you found counsel, Mr. Chen," he remarked. "Would your attorney care to introduce herself to the court?" Gloria stood, her heart pounding but her voice steady. Gloria Matthews, Your Honor, representing the defendant. Victoria Wells was on her feet immediately. Your Honor, the people have concerns about Ms. Matthews' qualifications and experience. We request verification of her credentials before proceeding. The judge turned to Gloria. Ms. Matthews? Gloria had anticipated this. She removed her bar card and law school diploma from her briefcase, handing them to the court officer. I was admitted to the bar 4 years ago, Your Honor. While this is my first case, I am fully qualified to represent Mr. Chen. Judge Franklin examined her credentials, his expression unreadable. The courtroom was silent, the tension almost tangible. Your credentials appear to be in order, Ms. Matthews, he said finally. However, given the complexity of this case and your lack of trial experience, I must ask, are you certain you're prepared to proceed? Gloria met his gaze directly. I am, Your Honor. Mr. Chen has complete confidence in my ability to represent him, as do I. The judge nodded slowly. Very well. Ms. Wells, you may continue with your examination of Dr. Huang. Victoria Wells approached the witness stand, her confidence evident in every step. Dr. Leslie Huang, a respected technology expert, had been testifying about the flaws in Richard's encryption algorithm when Harold abandoned the case. Dr. Huang, Wells began, yesterday you testified that the fundamental flaws in TrustGuard encryption would have been apparent to Mr. Chen's team by March 15th. Could you explain how you reached that conclusion? Dr. Huang launched into a technical explanation that Gloria followed carefully, making occasional notes. When Wells finished her questions, Judge Franklin turned to the defense table. Your witness, Ms. Matthews. Gloria stood, feeling the weight of expectation as she approached the witness stand. She smiled slightly at Dr. Huang, who regarded her with polite curiosity. Good morning, Dr. Huang. I just have a few questions to clarify your testimony. Gloria's voice grew stronger with each word. You stated that the flaws in TrustGuard would have been apparent by March 15th. What specific evidence led you to that date? Dr. Huang adjusted her glasses. The initial test results from that period showed anomalies in the encryption pattern when dealing with large datasets. Gloria nodded. I see. And have you personally reviewed all the test logs from Mr. Chen's laboratory? I reviewed the logs provided to me by the prosecution, yes. All of them? Or selected entries? Dr. Huang hesitated. Selected entries that demonstrated the relevant issues. Gloria retrieved a document from her briefcase. Your Honor, I'd like to enter this into evidence as Defense Exhibit A. These are the complete test logs from Mr. Chen's laboratory for the period in question. The judge nodded and Gloria handed copies to the court and the prosecution before giving one to Dr. Huang. Dr. Huang, would you please turn to page 27? This is the March 15th entry you referenced. Gloria waited while the witness found the page. Now could you read the conclusion statement at the bottom? Dr. Huang frowned slightly but complied. Initial anomalies detected in large data set processing. Results inconclusive. Further testing required to determine if pattern represents a flaw or expected behavior in new environments. Inconclusive, Gloria repeated. Not definitive evidence of a flaw, correct? Well, yes, but... And now please turn to page 42, the entry from May 3rd. Gloria waited patiently. Could you read that conclusion as well? Dr. Huang's frown deepened as she read, comprehensive. Testing confirms initial anomalies represent significant vulnerability in large-scale implementation. Recommend immediate protocol revision and disclosure to partners. Thank you, Gloria said. So according to the actual laboratory records, conclusive evidence of the flaw wasn't established until May 3rd, not March 15th, as you testified. Is that correct? The courtroom was completely silent. Dr. Huang looked uncomfortable. These appear to be the complete logs which I hadn't seen before. Based on this information, yes, conclusive evidence came in May. Gloria kept her expression neutral, but inside her heart soared. And are you aware that Mr. Chen disclosed these findings to all investors on June 1st, less than 30 days after confirmation? I wasn't provided with that information, Dr. Huang admitted. Thank you, Dr. Huang. No further questions. As Gloria returned to the defense table, she felt Richard's eyes on her. The hint of a smile played at the corners of his mouth, the first genuine one she'd seen since this nightmare began. Victoria Wells requested a short recess, which the judge granted. As soon as they were alone in a conference room, Richard turned to Gloria. "That was brilliant," he said, the awe evident in his voice. "You completely undermined their timeline." "It's just the beginning," Gloria cautioned. "They'll try to recover. Wells is too good to let this derail her completely." Right on cue, there was a knock at the door. A court officer entered, followed by Victoria Wells. "Ms. Matthews." "Wells," said her voice carefully controlled. "I think we should talk." Gloria gestured to a chair. "Please sit." Wells remained standing. "I'll be direct. We believe it would be in everyone's best interest to consider a deal." Richard started to speak, but Gloria placed a gentle hand on his arm. "What kind of deal?" "Mr. Chen pleads guilty to a reduced charge of negligent misrepresentation. No jail time, a fine, and community service." "Absolutely not," Richard said firmly. "I did nothing wrong." Wells turned her attention to Gloria. "Ms. Matthews, I understand this is your first case. It's going well so far, I'll grant you that. But this is a complex matter and the government has resources you can't imagine." Gloria stood, meeting Wells eye to eye. "Ms. Wells, I appreciate your concern for my client's welfare. However, he is innocent and we intend to prove that. Perhaps you should consider your own position. Your star witness just contradicted her previous testimony based on evidence you should have provided to her." Wells's expression hardened. "This isn't over, Ms. Matthews, not by a long shot." After she left, Richard let out a breath. "They're worried." "Yes," Gloria agreed, "but also dangerous. They won't make the same mistake twice." As they prepared to return to court, Gloria straightened her borrowed jacket and touched the pearl earrings for luck. The morning had gone better than she dared hope, but the real battle was just beginning. Back in the courtroom, Wells called her next witness, Thomas Reed, Richard's former head of investor relations. As he took the stand, Gloria noticed Richard, tense beside her. "What's wrong?" she whispered. "Reed was fired 6 months ago," Richard murmured back, "for leaking confidential information to competitors." Gloria's mind raced. This changed everything. As Wells began questioning Reed about investor communications, Gloria quickly jotted notes for her cross-examination, a new strategy forming. The prosecution was adapting, but so was she. For the first time, Gloria allowed herself to believe they might actually win this thing. Thomas Reed sat on the witness stand with an air of smug confidence that made Gloria instantly wary. His testimony painted Richard as a calculating businessman who deliberately misled investors to protect his company's stock price. The jury seemed captivated by his insider perspective, and Gloria noticed several of them nodding along as he spoke. "Mr. Reed," Victoria Wells asked, "in your capacity as head of investor relations, did Mr. Chen ever direct you to withhold information from shareholders?" "Absolutely," Reed replied without hesitation. "It was standard practice. When we learned about the trust guard flaws, he explicitly told me to keep it quiet until he gave the word." Gloria wrote steadily in her notebook, not looking up. Beside her, Richard leaned over. "He's lying," he whispered, his voice tight with anger. "I know," Gloria murmured back. "Let him talk. The more specific his lies, the easier they'll be to disprove." Wells continued building her case through Reed's testimony, establishing him as a reluctant participant in Richard's supposed deception. When she finally said, "No further questions," Judge Franklin turned to Gloria. "Your witness, Ms. Matthews." Gloria approached the stand unhurriedly, carrying only a single folder. She smiled at Reed, who returned the expression with a dismissive glance. "Mr. Reed, you testified that you worked as head of investor relations for Chen Technologies for how long?" 5 years, he replied, "until 6 months ago." "And how did your employment end?" Reed shifted slightly. "We had a difference of opinion on company direction." "A difference of opinion," Gloria repeated thoughtfully. "Not because you were fired for cause?" Wells stood immediately. Objection, Your Honor. Relevance. Goes to credibility, Your Honor. Gloria responded calmly. Judge, Franklin considered. I'll allow it. The witness will answer. Reed straightened his tie. I was terminated, yes. For what reason specifically? As I said, differences in… Mr. Reed, Gloria interrupted gently. You're under oath. Were you fired for leaking confidential company information to competitors? The courtroom stirred. Reed's confident facade cracked slightly. That was the allegation. I denied it then and I deny it now. I see. Gloria opened her folder. Your Honor, I'd like to enter this into evidence as Defense Exhibit B. After the document was distributed, Gloria continued. Mr. Reed, this is a copy of your termination letter signed by you, acknowledging receipt. It clearly states you were dismissed for unauthorized disclosure of proprietary information to Direct Secure Inc., a direct competitor. Is that correct? Reed's jaw tightened. Yes, that's what it says. And Direct Secure is now developing an encryption product similar to TrustGuard, is it not? I wouldn't know, I don't work for them. Gloria raised an eyebrow. You don't? That's interesting. She pulled another document from her folder. Because I have here your current employment contract with Direct Secure, dated just 3 weeks after your termination from Chen Technologies. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Wells looked surprised. This clearly wasn't information she had. Mr. Reed, Gloria continued, would you agree that you have a strong personal and financial interest in the outcome of this case? No more than any other witness, he insisted, but his confidence was visibly crumbling. Let's turn to your specific testimony about Mr. Chen directing you to withhold information about flaws from investors. You stated this occurred after the flaws were discovered. When exactly did this conversation take place? Reed hesitated. Mid-March, after the initial tests. Gloria nodded thoughtfully. Mid-March. That's very specific. Do you recall the date? March 16th or 17th, I believe. You believe, Gloria echoed. Was this conversation in person or by phone? In person, in his office. I see. And Mr. Chen specifically told you not to disclose the flaws to investors? Yes. Those were his exact words. Gloria's expression remained neutral, but inside she felt a surge of triumph. She had him. Mr. Reed, could you please check Mr. Chen's travel schedule for March? She handed him another document. This is his calendar for that month, verified by his executive assistant. Reed scanned the page, and Gloria saw the exact moment he realized his mistake. According to this calendar, Mr. Chen was in Tokyo from March 14th through March 20th for the International Technology Summit. So he couldn't have had an in-person conversation with you in his office on March 16th or 17th, could he? Reed swallowed hard. I must have misremembered the date. Perhaps. Or perhaps the conversation never happened at all. Gloria turned to the jury, making brief eye contact with several members. No further questions, Your Honor. As Gloria returned to her seat, she felt the shift in the courtroom's energy. The jurors were looking at Reed differently now, with suspicion. Richard leaned close as she sat down. That was incredible, he whispered. How did you find his contract with Direct Secure? I didn't sleep much last night, Gloria admitted quietly. After you mentioned he was fired, I did some research. His LinkedIn profile listed his new job. The rest was educated guessing. Judge Franklin called for the lunch recess, and Gloria let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. As they gathered their papers, a young man approached their table. Ms. Matthews? I'm Ben Wong from the New York Times. I'd love to get a quote about no comment at this time, Gloria interrupted firmly. We'll speak after the verdict. Outside the courtroom, more reporters waited, shouting questions as Gloria and Richard made their way to a private conference room. Once inside, with the door closed against the noise, Richard collapsed into a chair. You're trending on social media, he said, showing her his phone. Housekeeper lawyer is everywhere. Gloria winced. That's not exactly how I want it to be known. People are amazed by you, Richard countered. And they should be. In one morning, you've done more for my case than Harold did in months. Before Gloria could respond, there was a knock at the door. A court officer entered with a delivery bag. "Someone sent lunch for you," he explained, setting it on the table. After he left, Richard peered into the bag. "It's from Luis's kitchen, the best Cuban food in the city." He pulled out a note and read it aloud. "Gloria, we are so proud of you. Knock 'em dead. Love. Your family." Gloria felt tears prick her eyes. My daughter must have seen the news. They ate in companionable silence, the weight of the morning's victories and the afternoon's challenges hanging between them. Gloria was halfway through her sandwich when her phone buzzed with a text. "It's from my son," she said, reading the message. "He says there's a reporter at our apartment building asking questions about me." Richard frowned. "The press works fast. Are you worried?" Gloria considered this. "A little. I'm a private person. I never wanted attention." She looked at him directly. "But I'm more concerned about what the prosecution will do next. Wells wasn't prepared for us today. She will be this afternoon. What do you think their strategy will be?" "They'll try to overwhelm us with technical details," Gloria said. "And they'll bring in character witnesses to make you seem cold, calculating, ruthless." Richard nodded slowly. "That shouldn't be hard. Most people think I am those things." Gloria studied him for a moment. "Are you?" "I'm demanding," he admitted. "I expect excellence. I don't suffer fools gladly." He met her eyes. "But I don't cheat, and I don't lie." "I know," Gloria said simply. "That's why I'm here." A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only when Gloria's phone buzzed again. "Another reporter?" Richard asked. "No," Gloria said, her expression growing serious. "It's from my old study. Group from law school. They've found something interesting." She showed him the message. "Someone on the prosecution's team has connections to Direct Secure too." Richard sat up straighter. "Who?" "They're still digging. But if it's true, it could explain why they pursued this case so aggressively." Gloria began gathering her notes. "We should get back. I want to review the witness list before court resumes." As they walked back to the courtroom, Gloria noticed people watching her, whispering as she passed. The morning's events had transformed her from an oddity to someone to be reckoned with. It was unsettling, but also empowering. The afternoon session began with the prosecution calling a parade of technical experts, each testifying about the encryption flaws and their potential impact. Gloria cross-examined them methodically, not trying to disprove the flaws, which were real, but establishing that their discovery and disclosure timeline aligned with Richard's account, not the prosecution's. By late afternoon, the strain was showing on Victoria Wells's face. She kept glancing at her notes, whispering urgently with her team during breaks. When Judge Franklin finally adjourned for the day, she approached Gloria and Richard as they were packing up. "Ms. Matthews," Wells said, her voice low, "we should talk about a revised plea offer." Gloria straightened, meeting the prosecutor's gaze. "We're not interested in a plea, Ms. Wells. My client is innocent." "Everyone in that position says they're innocent," Wells replied, a hint of condescension in her tone. "But smart defendants know when to cut their losses. And smart prosecutors," Gloria countered, "know when they're pursuing a case for the wrong reasons." She paused meaningfully. "We've been looking into connections between your office and Direct Secure. Very interesting findings." Wells's expression froze. "That's completely inappropriate." "So is prosecuting a man to benefit his competitors," Richard interjected. Wells looked between them, her composure cracking slightly. "This conversation is over. I'll see you both tomorrow." She turned and walked away stiffly. As they left the courthouse, reporters swarmed again, cameras flashing. Gloria kept her head high, neither seeking nor avoiding the attention. One question cut through the noise. "Ms. Matthews, how does it feel to go from cleaning Mr. Chen's house to defending him in court?" Gloria paused, turning toward the voice. The crowd quieted, waiting for her answer. "It feels like justice," she said clearly. "And justice doesn't care what job title you held yesterday." The cameras flashed more intensely as Richard guided her to his waiting car. Once inside, away from the chaos, Gloria finally allowed herself to exhale fully. "One day down," Richard said, loosening his tie. "The hardest is still to come," Gloria reminded him. "Tomorrow they'll put you on the stand." Richard nodded soberly. "Will I be ready?" Gloria looked at him, this man she had worked for but never truly known until now. "Yes," she said with quiet confidence. "We both will be." The third day of trial dawned with a crowd outside the courthouse twice the size of the previous day. Overnight, Gloria's story had captured the public's imagination. As their car approached, she saw people holding handmade signs. "Go Gloria," and "Housekeepers for Justice." "You've become a symbol," Richard observed, watching her reaction. Gloria shook her head slightly. "I didn't ask for that." "Few symbols do," he replied. "Are you ready for today?" She nodded, clutching her briefcase a little tighter. "Your testimony is critical. Just remember what we practiced. Answer truthfully, but concisely. Don't volunteer information." Inside, the courtroom was packed to capacity. Judge Franklin had to call for order twice before the proceedings could begin. Victoria Wells stood, her composure restored after yesterday's setbacks. The prosecution calls Richard Chen to the stand. Gloria watched as Richard walked confidently to the witness box, took his oath, and sat down. His expression was calm, but she could see the tension in his shoulders. Wells began methodically, establishing Richard's role at his company and his oversight of the Trust Guard project. Then she shifted to more aggressive questioning. "Mr. Chen, would you describe yourself as a hands-on CEO?" "I stay informed about all major projects, yes. So nothing significant happens at Chen Technologies without your knowledge?" "That's correct." Wells nodded, pacing slightly. "Then you were fully aware of the Trust Guard encryption testing process?" "Yes, I received regular updates, including the March 15th test results that showed anomalies." Richard glanced briefly at Gloria before answering. "Yes, I was informed about those preliminary results." "And you understood these anomalies might indicate serious flaws in the system?" "We understood they required further investigation. At that stage, they were inconclusive." Wells's expression hardened. "Mr. Chen, in the 2 months between those initial findings and your disclosure to investors, your company sold $30 million in stock options. Was that just coincidence?" Gloria tensed. This was new information not covered in their preparation. "Those sales were scheduled months in advance," Richard replied evenly. "They were part of our regular financial management, unrelated to Trust Guard." "Really?" Wells picked up a document. "Because the timing seems remarkably convenient." For the next 20 minutes, Wells hammered Richard on the stock sales, trying to establish a financial motive for delaying disclosure. Gloria watched the jury carefully, noting their reactions. Several seemed troubled by this new angle. When Wells finally said, "No further questions," Gloria took a deep breath and stood. "Mr. Chen," she began, keeping her voice conversational, "let's discuss these stock sales. Who authorized them?" "Our board of directors, following the recommendation of our financial advisors." "And when was this authorization given?" "December of last year, as part of our annual financial planning." Gloria nodded. "Your Honor, I'd like to enter this into evidence as Defense Exhibit C." She handed documents to the court officer. "These are the board meeting minutes from December, showing the planned stock sales schedule for the entire year." As the papers were distributed, Gloria continued, "Mr. Chen, according to these minutes, were the March and April stock sales unique or part of a larger pattern?" "They were part of a quarterly schedule. We've made similar sales every quarter for the past 3 years." "Thank you." Gloria changed direction. "Now, about the Trust Guard project. What was your initial vision for this technology?" For the first time in the trial, Richard's eyes lit up with genuine passion. Trust Guard was designed to protect vulnerable systems, hospitals, utilities, small businesses that can't afford expensive security. We wanted to create something that would be accessible to everyone, not just major corporations. And when you learned about the confirmed flaws in May, what was your first action? I assembled our entire development team to understand the scope of the problem and how quickly we could fix it. Did you consider not disclosing the flaws to investors? Never, Richard said firmly. That would violate everything I believe in. We disclosed within 3 weeks of confirmation, once we had a clear understanding of the issues and a roadmap for solutions. Gloria turned toward the jury. One final question, Mr. Chen. If you had known about these flaws earlier, would you have done anything differently? Richard considered this carefully. I would have disclosed them earlier. Not because it was legally required at that stage, but because transparency has always been my company's policy. We can't build trust with secrets. Thank you, Gloria said. No further questions. As Richard returned to the defense table, Gloria felt cautiously optimistic. His testimony had been strong, authentic, but the stock sales had caught them off guard, and she wasn't sure they'd fully neutralize that concern. The prosecution rested their case, and Judge Franklin turned to Gloria. Ms. Matthews, is the defense ready to present its case? Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Philip Winters. A distinguished older man with silver hair made his way to the witness stand. After he was sworn in, Gloria began her questioning. Mr. Winters, what is your position? I'm the chairman of the board at Chen Technologies. And were you involved in the decision to schedule quarterly stock sales? Yes. I proposed it myself, based on recommendations from our financial team. Gloria led him through testimony that corroborated Richard's account of the stock sales. Then she shifted focus. Mr. Winters, how long have you known Richard Chen? Nearly 20 years. I was one of his first investors when he started the company in his garage. And in that time, have you ever known him to mislead investors or partners? Never, Winters said emphatically. His integrity is why I've stayed with the company all these years. In our industry, many founders are willing to cut corners for quick profits. Richard always plays the long game, building trust over time. Gloria nodded. Thank you, Mr. Winters. Victoria Wells's cross-examination was brief and ineffective. Winters was an experienced businessman who couldn't be easily rattled. Gloria called 2 more witnesses, the head of the Trust Guard development team, who confirmed the timeline of flaw discovery, and a renowned ethics professor who explained the appropriate disclosure standards for the industry. By late afternoon, Gloria was preparing for her closing argument when a court officer approached with a note. She read it quickly, then whispered to Richard, "My former classmate came through. They found a connection." Richard's eyes widened. Between Wells and Direct Secure? Not Wells herself, Gloria explained hurriedly. Her boss, the district attorney. His brother-in-law is on their board of directors. Before they could discuss further, Judge Franklin announced, "Court will reconvene tomorrow morning for closing arguments." Outside, the media circus had grown even larger. Gloria spotted her daughter and son in the crowd, beaming with pride. She gave them a small wave, as Richard guided her through the throng to his car. Once inside, she turned to him. "We need to decide whether to use this information about the DA in my closing." Richard considered this. Is it admissible, relevant to the case? It explains why they pursued such a weak case so aggressively, Gloria said. But using it means making an enemy of the district attorney. Would that affect you, your future? Gloria hadn't thought that far ahead. Possibly, but that's not important right now. Richard studied her for a long moment. It is to me. He paused. Gloria, whatever happens tomorrow, you've already accomplished something remarkable. I don't want this case to cost you more than you've already given. Let me worry about that, she said firmly. This is about justice, not my future. Gloria barely slept that night, polishing her closing argument until dawn. She thought about all that had happened in just a few days, how her life had transformed from predictable routines to this dramatic new reality. The final day of trial began with Victoria Wells's closing argument, a polished, passionate appeal that portrayed Richard as a calculating businessman who had gambled with investors' trust for financial gain. When Gloria's turn came, she stood slowly, feeling the weight of all eyes upon her. The borrowed suit, now familiar, gave her confidence as she faced the jury. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, "4 days ago I stood before you as someone unexpected. I saw your surprise when I identified myself as Mr. Chen's attorney. I understood your skepticism. After all, how could a housekeeper possibly defend a billionaire in a complex fraud case?" She paused, letting the question hang in the air. "The answer is simple. Because I know him. Not as a CEO or a public figure, but as a human being. For 15 years I've watched Richard Chen when he thought no one was looking. I've heard his private conversations, seen how he treats people when there's nothing to gain. Character isn't what you show the world. It's who you are when you think no one is watching." Gloria moved closer to the jury. "The prosecution wants you to believe that Richard Chen deliberately hid information to protect his company's stock price. But the evidence tells a different story. It shows a leader who discovered a problem, investigated thoroughly, and disclosed it promptly once. The facts were clear." She walked them through the timeline again, emphasizing the documentation that supported their case. Then she paused, making her decision in that moment. "You might wonder why this case was brought at all, given the evidence." I wondered too. Gloria took a deep breath. "What the prosecution hasn't told you is that there are concerning connections between the district attorney's office and Direct Secure, Mr. Chen's main competitor." Victoria Wells was on her feet instantly. "Objection. This is outrageous, Your Honor." "Approach the bench," Judge Franklin ordered. At the sidebar, Wells was livid. "This is completely inappropriate, Your Honor. There's no evidence of this in the record." "It goes to motive, Your Honor," Gloria argued calmly, "and explains why such a weak case was pursued so aggressively." The judge considered both women. "I'll allow limited exploration of this connection, Ms. Matthews, but tread carefully." Back before the jury, Gloria continued. "The district attorney's brother-in-law sits on Direct Secure's board, the same company that hired Mr. Reed immediately after he was fired from Chen Technologies, the same company that stands to gain millions if TrustGuard fails." She let that sink in, then softened her tone. "But this case isn't really about corporate rivalries or stock prices. It's about trust. Trust in our justice system to pursue truth, not advantages for the connected. Trust in the evidence before you, not assumptions based on wealth or position." Gloria looked at each juror in turn. "And trust in your own judgment to see this case for what it truly is, an attempt to punish innovation rather than protect investors." She returned to the defense table where Richard nodded almost imperceptibly. The jury deliberated for just under 3 hours. When they filed back in, Gloria held her breath. The forewoman stood, paper in hand. "On the charge of securities fraud, we find the defendant, Richard Chen, not guilty." The courtroom erupted. Gloria felt Richard's hand grasp hers under the table, squeezing tightly. They had won. Outside, in the bright afternoon sunlight, reporters surrounded them immediately. "Ms. Matthews, will you continue practicing law?" "Mr. Chen, will Ms. Matthews join your legal team permanently?" "Gloria, what's next for you?" Gloria raised her hands for quiet. "Today, justice was served. That's all that matters right now." As the crowd continued shouting questions, Richard leaned close to her ear. "They're right about one thing. What is next for you?" She looked at Deo. Him, this man she had served for 15 years and saved in just 4 days. "I don't know yet, but I won't be making your coffee tomorrow." Richard laughed, a genuine relieved sound. "I never properly saw you until now, did I?" "Few people do," Gloria said, spotting her children making their way through the crowd. "We're all invisible until we choose not to be." Her daughter reached her first, enveloping her in a tight hug. "Mom, you were amazing." Gloria held her close, thinking about all the late nights studying while her children slept, the bus rides to law classes after long days of cleaning, the dreams deferred but never abandoned. "What will you do now?" her son asked, joining the embrace. Gloria looked at her family, then at Richard, then at the courthouse steps where her new journey had begun. "Something that matters," she said simply. "Something that makes visible all the people the world doesn't see." And in that moment, surrounded by cameras capturing her triumph, Gloria Matthews, housekeeper, mother, lawyer, defender, knew that whatever came next would be of her own choosing.